Anthony Tyrion Todd, conocido por su icónico papel en la saga de terror Candyman y su participación en la franquicia Destino Final, ha fallecido a los 69 años en su residencia de Los Ángeles. La noticia fue confirmada por su representante al medio Deadline, aunque no se han dado a conocer las causas de su deceso. Hoy en Que Peli Vemos le dedicaremos este video a repasar las películas más relevantes de su filmografía y algunos datos curiosos de su vida. Anthony Tyrion Todd nació el 4 de diciembre de 1954 en Washington, D.C. Su amor por la actuación comenzó a temprana edad y lo llevó a estudiar en la Universidad de Connecticut y a formarse en el Instituto Nacional de Teatro Eugene O'Neill.
You know, I went to university, dropped out. She wasn't too happy with that, but she gave me about 2 years to get my life together before. I have a lot of police officers in my family, and during that time, they used to come for Thanksgiving and sit. So why you want to be an actor? Why don't you just join the police force? And I said, because I don't want to kill people. And finally, I went back to university, got my master's in theater.
Donde comenzó a desarrollar la técnica que le llevaría a destacarse en la industria cinematográfica, siendo partícipe de más de 100 películas y series de televisión.
My first movie, I remember calling her, it was a Monday, it was raining on Fifth Avenue in New York. And I said, I got a movie. I was dancing in the street like Gene Kelly. I got a movie. And she says, great. Where do you have to go? I said, the Philippines. She said, she hung up the phone. It took me 3 weeks to convince her that I was going to be safe. Did it, and then of course I became her smiling baby boy again.
Su imponente figura, con casi 2 metros de altura y una voz grave distintiva, le permitió abrirse camino y convertirse en un ícono del cine de terror. Su debut actoral fue en el film Sleepwalk de 1986, dirigida por Sarah Driver, dando vida al enigmático Barrington Rutley. La película es una fantasía oscura que sigue a una mujer llamada Nicole, quien trabaja en una imprenta en Nueva York. Ella recibirá un manuscrito antiguo para traducirlo, lo que desatará una serie de eventos sobrenaturales y misteriosos. Ese mismo año también trabajaría en Platoon, de Oliver Stone, donde interpreta al sargento Warren en una representación cruda y realista de la guerra de Vietnam, destacando no solo los horrores de combate, sino también el impacto psicológico y moral en los soldados. 2 años más tarde sería dirigido por Dennis Hopper en Colores. Tony Todd da vida a un veterano de guerra. La película se centra en 2 policías de Los Ángeles, interpretados por Sean Penn y Robert Duvall, que intentan controlar la violencia de las pandillas en la ciudad. Colores es conocida por su representación realista y cruda de la vida en las calles y la violencia de las pandillas. Otro film en el que destacaría es En Beer de Clint Eastwood, la biografía del mítico saxofonista Charlie Parker, en la que interpretaría a Frog, un amigo y compañero músico de Parker. Su presencia en la película ayuda a ilustrar el entorno de la comunidad de jazz en la que Parker vivía y trabajaba. Su primer protagónico llegaría en 1990 de la mano de Tom Savini en el remake de La Noche de los Muertos Vivos del legendario George Romero, en la que 2 hermanos que visitaban la tumba de su madre son atacados por zombies. Luego de refugiarse en una granja bárbara, será ayudado por Ben, interpretado por Tony Todd. Su papel en el film sería elogiado por la crítica, pero recién en 1992 llegaría el papel de su vida, que le daría el rol de actor de culto, con el film Candyman, dirigido por Bernard Ross y basado en el relato de Lo Prohibido del escritor británico Clive Barker.
From my manager at the time saying that this new young director wanted to see me for a project called Candyman. I thought they were joking, I hung up, I thought it was some sort of autobiography or so forth. He insisted and I went in for a meeting with Bernard Rose. We had to go through a song and dance with Propaganda Studios at the time. They were actually pushing for an Eddie Murphy type. Fortunately, Bernard saw seriousness and depth in the character. We were able to meet, come together and hopefully bring that.
Todd interpreta a Daniel Robitaille, un espíritu vengativo conocido como Candyman, que aparece cuando su nombre es dicho 5 veces frente a un espejo. La historia se basa en una leyenda urbana y explora temas de racismo, injusticia y miedo. La película fue un éxito y generó varias secuelas, consolidando a Tony Todd como una figura legendaria en el género del terror.
Wanted it in terms of the interpretation of Candyman to be similar to the great Lon Chaney in Phantom of the Opera. We wanted the gothic elegance to his monstrosities, and I wanted it rooted in some sort of cause. So together we came up with the whole lynching, him being vilified for being in love with a woman of the wrong complexion. He was black, she was white. This is circa 1900 work. The poverty of my upbringing, although it was kept from me, is a major part of whatever pools of sadness I can pull up. I was taught how to dig into a role, dig into a script, find out what the super objectives are, what the character's point of view is, and I think I was able to bring that to it. Certainly a lot more than a comedic take would be. Bernard had Virginia Madsen and I do things like ballroom dancing together, and we took fencing lessons. We did all kinds of the romantic arts together to bring that long-lost attraction that is at the core of Candyman. Loss, redemption. I think Candyman definitely came along at the right time, at the right place. This was a horror film that had intelligence, had a social commentary. I found out later, not only did they have to pay off some gang members, and if you look the first half hour, those are actual gang members in the film that are careening around the entrances, but they also had police snipers. It was real deal. Virginia finally comes into the lair. This is something that they didn't include in the film. She comes into the lair.
We had a deal.
Surrender to me now, and he shall be unharmed.
We had a plexiglass turntable where we swirl around for a minute. That scene, they took 2 minutes out of that scene. And we got word that the studio was a little afraid of the interracial context because it's a very romantic moment. And then after that, I grab her in the arms and I lay her down on the slab. She is mine at that point. But they declared their love for each other in that swirling dance. And the studio was a little nervous about that. They were okay with a tall black man covered with bees, but when it came to a kiss or something like that, it was a little bit too risque.
Alex Proyas lo llamaría para actuar en su mítica El Cuervo, en la que un músico de rock queda resucitado por un cuervo para vengar su propia muerte y la de su prometida, donde interpretaría a Grange, el guardaespaldas del villano principal Top Dollar. Grange es un personaje crucial en la trama, ya que es responsable de herir al cuervo que otorga a Eric sus poderes sobrenaturales. En 1995 llegaría la primera secuela de Candyman, dirigida por Bill Condon. La trama se mueve a New Orleans, siguiendo una maestra de escuela que descubre que su familia está conectada con la leyenda de Candyman, quien fuera un artista talentoso y el hijo de un esclavo, que fue brutalmente asesinado por tener una relación con una mujer blanca.
The bees. The bees had their own trailer. It was a little bigger than mine. But since I didn't work as much as they did, it was okay. We had this wonderful bee wrangler. I never knew such a thing existed until I started working this thing. But anyway, his name was Dr. Norman Gary. And he says, Tony, you gotta face your fears. We gotta go into this trailer. We gotta get acquainted. I said, is it necessary, Norman? He says, absolutely, because it's gonna be you, them, and me, and you and them. The wackiest thing that ever happened was Norman said, come on, Tony. He pushed me in the trailer, locked the door. He says, I'm here, they're not gonna do anything. And they're swarming around, they're angry, the wings are agitated. And he started saying, no, all you gotta do is personalize them. And I said, what do you mean, Norman? He says, well, there's little Daryl, and there's Jeffrey. Hey, come here, Ethan, how are you today? I thought he was nuts, but I realized by personalizing him, you take away some of the fear. So therefore, in the course of 3 films, I only got 26 stings, mostly on the chest, is because they had practicals, folks, so they actually had a little Rayovac that they used to vacuum the bees off of me.
Candyman. She turned out the lights.
I love Candyman. I'm pretty sure that at this point, Candyman will be in the first 3 lines of my obituary, and I have no problem with that.
Helen.
Bernard told me later on that any film that a child cherishes and remembers, they're gonna hold it in their hearts forever. And I think that explains some of the longevity and the love of the character. I mean, whenever I go to conventions, there's never a dull moment or a short line. People waiting for that particular picture, even though I have 200 credits.
De la mano de Michael Bay interpretaría al Capitán Darrow en el film La Roca. como uno de los mercenarios que se unen al general Hummel, interpretado por Ed Harris, en su misión de tomar la isla de Alcatraz y amenazar con lanzar misiles cargados con gas nervioso sobre San Francisco. En 1997 tendría un cameo en Wishmaster, dirigida por Robert Kurtzman. La trama sigue al Dijin, que es liberada de una joya antigua y comienza a conceder deseos de manera retorcida y malévola. Todd interpreta a Johnny Valentine, uno de los muchos que se cruzarán con el Dijin y sufren las consecuencias de sus deseos. Un año más tarde tendría otro cameo en The Truman Show de Peter Weir en el papel de un policía. En 1999 volvería a interpretar a Daniel Robitaille en Candyman 3, El Día de los Muertos, dirigida por Turi Meyer. La historia se desarrolla durante la víspera del Día de los Muertos. Caroline, que es la hija de Anita Arndt, se ve acosada por Candyman, en busca de reclamar su alma para que esté a su lado. A medida de que Candyman asesina a aquellos cercanos a Caroline, ella deberá enfrentarse a su legado familiar y encontrar una manera de destruir el mito de Candyman para detener la masacre. En el 2000 llegaría el otro papel que lo convertiría en un icono cinematográfico, con la película Destino Final, dirigida por James Wan, film que se convertiría en una franquicia cinematográfica con 4 secuelas, en la que un grupo de personas escapan de la muerte luego de que uno de los protagonistas tuviera una premonición, pero los sobrevivientes empiezan a morir uno a uno en extraños accidentes, en una especie de reacción en cadena, donde Tony Todd interpreta a William Bloodworth, quien es propietario de una funeraria y tiene un gran conocimiento sobre la muerte y sus reglas. En el 2006 tomaría el rol del reverendo zombie en el film Hatchet, película de terror dirigida por Adam Green, que sigue a un grupo de turistas en un tour de pantano en Nueva Orleans, que se encuentran con el legendario asesino Victor Crowley, quien volvería con más protagonismo para sus 2 secuelas y en su posterior spin-off Victor Crowley. Su conocimiento del vudú y de las leyendas locales lo convierte en una figura clave en la lucha contra el asesino. Otro gran papel fue el del antropólogo Dan, en la película El hombre de la Tierra, del año 2007. La película se centra en una despedida improvisada para John, un profesor de historia que revela a sus colegas que tiene 14.000 años de edad y ha vivido de la prehistoria. En 2021 daría a luz la 4ª secuela de Candyman, escrita como una secuela directa de la original, dirigida por Nia Da Costa y producida por Jordan Peele, en la que regresa como el icónico espíritu vengativo Candyman, en una actualización del mito. La historia sigue a Anthony McCoy, un artista visual que se muda a un barrio de Chicago que ha sido gentrificado, pero que aún está marcada por la leyenda de Candyman. A medida de que Anthony investiga la historia de Candyman para su arte, comienza a desentrañar la verdad detrás de la leyenda y se verá atrapada en una espiral de terror.
Yeah, I was also, I just done Night of the Living Dead, the remake. So I had my first lead role and my son was born, and that was important. Just attention to detail. We didn't, people kept telling me, oh, this role's gonna change your life. Some people said, oh, you might not live it down. I said, no, that's not true. They underestimate me.
I mean, how did you find things changed after that?
It didn't hit immediately. I mean, the movie was a hit, but then it didn't hit me till like 2 years after it. And my daughter and I were shopping, Christmas shopping, and people kept running up. And to this day, I pinch myself because I never got that thing. Oh, I'm all that. I'm just happy to be doing that. And people kept coming up, well, Candyman. And she was like 4. And she says, dropped her little shopping bag. Said, that's not Candyman, that's my dad. And that resonated so much with me because it made keeping it real. Yeah, this is my job. I have an attractive job. But at the end of the day, you have to be a man first or a person first. You have to love your family, love your friends, and cherish the things that are really important.
Hasta el final de su vida, Todd continuó trabajando en producciones de terror como el film Stream, recientemente estrenado.
Theater Center by Marcus Gardley, who's the next great playwright, directed by Che Yu, who's artistic director of Victory Garden. 48 solid, straight standing ovations. That cannot compete with film because it's improv. It goes away. It's in the moment. It's right there and then it's gone. Film lasts forever. Even the bad ones. You can't get rid of it. Most of it, I'm happy that it's there. Oh, I know. A recent standout was when I did, I'm a video gamer, so when they called me to do Call of Duty Black Ops 2, made me sign a contract saying I could not talk about it to family, friends, anybody, strangers, under the suffrage of death. And for 4 months, I couldn't talk about what everybody knew was going to be the biggest single solid release in video game history. And finally, there it was. And seeing yourself digitized is an awesome, frightening Twilight Zone-like experience. Because now my emotions are in some memory bank somewhere, and I can go away and they can do what they want.
Isn't it? I mean, as a fan as well, as you said, you're a video gamer. What was it like, kind of, first of all, being asked to be in it and then seeing the final product?
It was the first campaign of that I actually finished. I was determined to finish because I wanted to see every single... And also doing video gaming, you have these points of light all over your body, which is basically a Navy SEAL suit, no pockets, and a big tennis ball on your head. And like they told me each one of the dots costs $35, something like that. It was like 365 on you. You're in a room surrounded by 262 cameras. So every movement you do is choreographed. And there's no props. There's only you and a few other actors. And all that other stuff is later on after. It's a little backwards, but try to make it believable.
Se rumorea que en el 2025 se estrenará el último largometraje de su carrera, con la quinta secuela de Destino Final, Bloodline, regresando al papel del mítico William Bloodworth. Tony Todd nos dejaría este mundo el 6 de noviembre de 2024, pero dejaría una huella imborrable en la historia del cine.
Incredible. And you mentioned Candyman, of course, earlier, and still a film that people love so much. Incredible film. Why do you think after all those years, 20 plus years, it still has a place in people's hearts?
I think it's a movie, whether it's got a story. It's got a beginning, middle, and end, and it opens with the most incredible lines in horror history. What's blood for if not for shedding? It's also a gothic love story, and I think that resonates. People talk about there being frightened, scared, but there's something about it. There's something real about it that makes you frightened, And also people deep down like to be feared, but not in the jokey way that's mostly prevalent. I mean, Candyman is not about jokes. And we had a great combination. Clive Barker, Bernard Rose, our director, Tony Richmond, all from England. Philip Glass. The chemistry between myself and Virginia Madsen. It was just a series of things that connected.